drove to the workshop this evening to make a start on changing the knackered water pump on this, but as ever, shit's changed a bit, and now, nah, not tonight I don't think. I'll show you why. Not really bad, but it's just one of them. Firstly, it's about fucking 7 o'clock and I am knackered. I've had a busy day, so I'm not really feeling it anyway. I could just do with going to sleep. But mainly because I get here and I thought, you know what? I wonder if there's any parcels coming for us next door. Because when we're not here, the delivery people know to drop it off to the garage next door. And I goes there and there was loads of parcels for Thomas and also this for me, which is another 1.8 20 valve, but a non-turbo. Yeah. The reason for this is, well, I am, as I've mentioned already, going to start building up a spare 1.8T with decent rods, exhaust valves and whatever to put in this for whenever this blows up. And also for whenever I want to go for, like, you know, 400, 500 plus horsepower. Because on these 1.8Ts, the actual internals, all it needs realistically is rods, exhaust valves, ideally double valve springs so you can rev them even higher, and ideally, well, not ideally, but you may as well, while it's apart, chuck some cams in it so they make more power up top. Lots of cams on the market, but they're about, they're not cheap, 650 quid roughly. Quite expensive for a pair of cams. And but what a lot of people do, a cheap, but you know, people have gone well over 500 brake on them, a cheap upgrade is NA cams, as in 1.8 20 valve non-turbo cams. If you're lucky, you can pick up those cams for like 25 quid each. Trouble is, in the UK at least, 1.8 20 valve non-turbo engines, they didn't sell that many. We had loads of 1.8Ts, not many non-turbos, because, wow, it just didn't. It wasn't a popular model. So finding just the cams on their own, you know, can take a bit of luck. I had a look on eBay and there was a few complete engines, not many. Lots of complete engines in Europe because they're really common in Europe, but UK, no. And the ones that were for sale were like fucking like 300 odd quid. It's like that, it doesn't make it worth it then. But a few of them, most of them in fact, were down, you know, 300 quid or best offer. And I thought, well, no way am I paying that. But also, surely, because these engines are really reliable and not remotely sought after, I mean, the likelihood, even if you was unlucky enough to manage to break a non-turbo 20 valve engine, the car a non-turbo 20 valve engine will be fitted to will generally be such a worthless piece of shit, you would just scrap it, you wouldn't change the engine. So chances are anybody selling one of these fucking non-turbo 20 valves has probably had it for years and like won't be able to get rid of it for love nor money. So I thought, fuck it. Although I'd be annoyed if people do this to me, I'm going to be cheeky and offer, you know, do best offers of really low numbers for these engines and see if anyone just wants rid of the fucking thing. And you know, we'll see. So I best offered a few and they all got back to me real fast with, like, you know, counter offers. Weren't bad, you know, I probably would have paid for it, but one of them, who clearly just wanted the fucking thing out of his way, just accepted the offer, and it was cheap, like way less than half the asking price that he originally had. And here it is. It's a fairly late, I think like 2002 or 2003 I think it was. 20 valve non-turbo, looks very, very clean and good condition, and it's very complete as well. I mean, it come with the ECU, and because it's a late one, it's an ME 7.5. So in all honesty, I'm not sure. I'd have to check, but I get the feeling this is just the normal 180 ECU with different map. So that could be handy. Yeah, it's got everything. It's also got a non-turbo exhaust manifold, and it's properly divided, as in 104, 2 and 3. Easy way, a cheap way to make a twin scroll manifold, turbo manifold. And it would be, but I'm not sure, I need to check. But I got a funny feeling the way the gearbox, 6-speed boxes on these, this is in the wrong place, so it won't fit. I might be wrong. I'll take this off and find out, but anything's a bonus. What I paid for this, I paid genuinely, all I wanted was the cams. I would have paid just for the cams for that, but it came very, very complete. But yeah, the cam, it's quite funny, the cams, if you look at the specs, not that easy to get the specs, and some people are a bit misled by them because they're not listed in a normal way. They're not listed like seat to seat, which a lot of cams are. So people look at the cam specs for these, the numbers look quite low, but in reality they're not. If you compare them, the cams of these are very, very similar, if not fucking to the extent that these aftermarket cam manufacturers have just copied them. But these are like what most cam manufacturers call like stage 2 cams for 180s, and they're almost exactly the same specs as the fucking 1.8 non-turbo NA cams. In fact, pretty much all of sort of these stage 1 sort of cams for 180s I've seen, I've got milder cams in this, so fucking winner. A lot of people just run the inlet cam. I think personally, because I'm not fussed about low down power, and I've seen results that tell me I want to, I'm going to run both inlet and exhaust cam. A lot of people don't, because obviously turbo cars don't tend to need as much cam as NA, but for what I want and from what I've seen results, I would say yeah. It's funny, I've not seen many, I know that it's been done, but there's not many, at least online, that I can find good proven results with these NA cams. You see a lot of people have done it and been like, well, it's not really gained me anything. It's gained me a bit up top but lost a bit low down, so it's nothing special. Or some people's like, oh, it's it makes the car feel a bit revier up top, so it's worth it, but don't expect big gains and all that. But when you look at their specs, it's like these cars are like on like hybrid KO4s and baby shit like that, where cams don't work really on little fucking turbos, because the air has to get out really. If you've got too much cam for your exhaust flow, as in your turbine flow, if anything, the cam works against each other. I've seen that a million times. Literally, if you put like too big a cam for your turbo, you'll not only lose lower down, where any bigger cam will lose lower down because that's just the nature of how they work, but you lose up top as well, because where it would normally breathe better up top, the fucking restrictive turbine housing is on the high flowing cam literally fights against each other and makes it worse. I've seen it on other cars, like personally, I've seen what have I seen? I remember I've seen a Renault 5 Turbo that was like that. It had the standard turbo on it, but they'd fitted a Piper 285 cam, and basically what it had done, it had reduced low down power a bit, like a big cam generally was, but it also fucking killed it up top as well. Like literally, it was on its ass at 5,000 RPM, whereas with the standard cam and that turbo, you know, you'd probably have another 1,000 RPM or so of worthwhile rev range at least. But this thing didn't feel like it wanted to rev past 5, it's dog shit. And I just remember something funny that I saw many years ago on a 1.8T, long before I ever had anything to do with 1.8Ts. I totally forgot about this, but this is the most relevant thing going. I wonder if I can dig it out the archives, because, wow, because it might be somewhere, and I'm, you know, friends with a lot of these people. But back in the day, like right back in the day, when I was at Redline, obviously we was a bit more of a technical magazine, and Fast Car was kind of one of our rivals, and they would try and sometimes to be a bit technical, but they didn't really have the people with that kind of knowledge. And one of the things they did, I can't remember whose car it was, but one of them had a silver Mark IV Golf 1.8T, and they decided to do a cam test, basically, and you know, kind of quite a big deal, nice techie cam test for, you know, on the dyno and all that. And they got Piper, I think it was, to supply them with some cams for, yeah, this 1.8T. And if I remember right, it lost like 20 or 30 horsepower from standard cams. And the reason was exactly what I've just said. The thing still had like the standard, or near enough standard at least, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it had the standard KO3S that 1.8T, you know, Golf GTIs came with. So small as fuck. So it does exactly what I suggested, especially on these, which already have got a ton of flow because they're 20 valve heads. You know, you need cams on these less than a lot of engines. So they basically put some wild Larry cams in that would be shit hot if you was making like 500 plus horsepower. But when you're making baby power with no exhaust flow, it's just gonna create loads of reversal and shit, and it's just gonna be terrible. And yeah, it lost a ton of power. But like I said, although there's not been very much good testing of these cams on, or at least public testing of these cams on big power engines or bigger power engines, what I have seen basically says, yeah, they make a fucking drastic difference. I saw one where it was like, well, they've made a lot more power, a lot more at high RPM, like fucking 25, 30 horsepower at like 6,000 RPM up versus a standard engine, but the actual peaks were almost exactly the same. It's just with these cams it peaked at fucking 1,500 RPM higher than standard. So, but that made it seem not that great. But when you looked into the detail, the boost, what they'd done, they'd not adjusted the boost at all. It just on the same duty cycle on the solenoid. So the extra exhaust flow, this was a fairly big turbo engine, the extra exhaust flow of the new cams made at that duty cycle made the boost way lower, because boost is a measure of restriction. So it made the same power at about 5 psi less boost. So as well as it making massively more power at higher RPM, it made it at way less boost. So it's like, oh. And then it also had, if I remember right, a either EGT or back pressure sensor. And again, thanks to, because this had the exhaust cam as well as the inlet cam, it had far lower either back pressure or EGT. I can't remember which, but either way it suggests a far happier, healthier, debt resistant and generally less likely to blow up engine. So yeah, although there's not many, or at least what I can find, publicly tested big turbo setups on these cams, lots of ones on mild engines that are just, if the people understood how turbos and cams work, they wouldn't have fucking fitted them anyway. But I've only seen this one big turbo one with good info, and the numbers, you know, like I said, the write-up to it made it sound not impressive. but it's like read between the lines and understand what's actually happening. And fuck yes, it's massively impressive. And although I've not seen any dyno proof, somebody else, I'm not going to say who or what, but somebody else I know who's used these cams on a big turbo engine, although he hasn't got dyno numbers because I think it was all done on the road, he said it, yes, big difference on an engine that was making like 500 horsepower. So yeah, I've got basically a whole engine including ECU and everything for a price that I would have just bought the cams for, but it means I've got loads of spares for other shit. Right, I've stripped down the engine that I bought, well, purely for the cams. See if there was anything else interesting, and not really, nothing that interesting. I mean, I don't care, literally I could have got the cams and thrown the rest away, but I'm sure there's bits and pieces. It's going to be handy, so I'm going to keep the engine until I know there's not. Couple of interesting bits though. That's the inlet manifold. Well, part of it. The plenum's literally separate, held on with there's like 4 rubber hoses, you know, with clamps either side, and then to the plenum. The plenum shit is some plastic, big ugly like dual length runner setup, which is fine for NA, but you know, not really anything I'd really can be bothered with for turbo stuff. Don't look like it flows that great anyway. But this bit, I need to check port sizes versus like the OE ones and whatever. But this bit could be a real good base for an aftermarket inlet manifold. Either weld something to this, or because it is literally hose fittings, hose, you know, and then a plenum, because that's, you know, been fairly commonly done over the years on turbo engines, be it production and race cars. So I'm keeping this in case I need it. I'm going to keep the loom because a lot of it is related to the normal 180T ones. It's not the same, but it's got a lot of similar parts, so it'll probably be handy. Same with the fuel rail. It's either the same or similar, so I'm keeping it, and a few other bits and bobs. This is the exhaust manifold, which I was particularly interested in because it's divided correctly, as in 1 and 4 to one scroll, 2 and 3 to the other. Hoping it would be good for a side mount, you know, like sidewinder they call it, turbo setup. Unfortunately, because this is made for longitudinal application with a different gearbox, more like the one that's on a yellow car, this outlet is a bit too low, unfortunately. Once I'd cut off, well, basically it wouldn't fit a 4-wheel drive because there's the 4-wheel drive sort of the bolt, you know, the bits on the block anyway, the lumps where the bolts go in and shit, would hit this, so that's no good. But on the 2-wheel drive versions, the 6-speed, this with the ends chopped off will just about clear by looks of it. I'm not 101% because you know, but I know enough that it would clear. Well, it either doesn't clear, or if it does, it's fucking close. But I didn't go further than that because where the gear linkage bolts on the box, sits on the box, whatever you want to call it, would be pretty much here. So while this physically would go in place, you'd have no way of making an outlet. Realistically, the only way you'd do it is by cutting it off shorter maybe and making it more custom from there. But yeah, no, I'm not going to bother. It's not bad, it's not perfect either, because like while 1 and 4 connect nicely and then a little link, 2 and 3 is not quite as good, where it's kind of a log. It don't really matter too much, it's still good, but considering it doesn't fit and it would need quite a lot of work to make it fit, nah. But there's a version again, fully divided. That's for the NA transverse applications. And again, properly divided, 1 and 4, 2 and 3. And it comes out like here, because it's transverse, not like this, so it will fit this. And also, the runners look like they merge really well as well. And because I saw this and I sort of saw the potential, I went on eBay and found one of the NA ones, and it was 50 quid, so I bought it, and that might be useful to use on that for a turbo setup, because I've also gone and bought a turbo because it was really cheap, and you know me and turbos. Worst comes to worst, I can sell it for a profit because it's a real good turbo for not much money, but I'll probably use it on this when, you know, on the new engine, not currently. It's staying as it is for now, but with the new engine with rods and valve springs and all that shit and these cams, I've got a new turbo. And yeah, because obviously if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go for like, you know, 500 odd. So yeah, that's how it is. I don't know if this new manifold's gonna be right. It'd be no good for making a twin scroll in a normal front engine application, because the manifold would be halfway down the back of the firewall, so to make it twin scroll then you'd have to loop right back up and fuck up. No, it wouldn't work. But for this, it might well do. It was worth buying it to find out, so when that arrives I'll work it out. But yeah, I'm keeping these bits because they're useful spares. I'm keeping that. I've thrown the rest away. I keep this. Wow, I need to look at the head because it all looks very clean. So if the head only differences are the exhaust valves aren't sodium filled, which don't matter because I need to change them anyway, and the valve springs are weak, which don't matter because I'm changing them anyway. If the rest is the same, this could be an ideal head to base the new engine on, because it looks very clean and hasn't had a very hard life. I mean, it's been in a very non-performance car, so it's gonna have an easier life than any standard turbo one has. But I check port sizes, I check everything to see if there's any differences, do a comparison. But yeah, that's where we are now, and now time to do some other shit.